Thanks for joining us this week, and welcome to Mutuality Matters, a podcast hosted by CBE International, where our mission is to promote the biblical message that God calls women and men of all cultures, races, and classes to share authority equally in service and leadership in the home, church, and world. Let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Mutuality Matters. My name is Tara Korpi, and I'm here with my co-host, Todd Korpi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, although I feel like there's something that we need to clear up.
Oh, no.
So I've been thinking about this. This is episode 3,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like we're kind of in pro mode now.
Oh, yeah.
We've gotten this thing rolling, and I feel like we need a jingle.
Oh, you going to sing it for us?
Well, I'm kind of we need. It doesn't have to be a jingle, but it could be something along the lines of like Fraser Crane's like "I'm listening."
Oh,
So
did you prepare something?
Well,
for us?
I thought maybe we could float the "I'm listening" thing, but I figured there might be a copyright issue
There
with that.
probably is a problem with that. Why don't you save that?
Yeah,
Think on it.
We'll save that.
Ponder
I'm
it.
gonna think about it, and I'm gonna get back to you guys because I feel like this is what the people want.
Wow.
People want a jingle, and I feel like this is a prime opportunity for us to give that to
I
people.
think that you're onto something, and I think we should table it.
I feel like this is what we tell our kids, maybe, like, or we'll see, like, can I go over so and so? We'll see,
But this is wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, we're so excited that you've joined us today, and we have some special guests with us today. We have pastors Mark and Michelle Benson with us, and we are so excited they're here. We have known them for a long time. I met them when I was 14, so we'll just, leave the math out there so that way people can figure it out on their own.
And
And
it was like 10 years
like
ago.
5 years ago. Yeah, like 10 years ago. It was fine. But we are so excited that they are here with us. They are pastors at Dothan Assembly in Dothan, Alabama, and they're just fantastic leaders. They have led for years and years, but they've really been super influential in our lives in helping us understand really how to lead well and lead well together. And so we're so thankful that they've joined us today. Thank you guys for being here. How are you doing?
Hey, it's so good to be here. I love the idea of a jingle. I love that. So I support
we just need to keep
Team
this support
Todd,
rolling.
yeah. So, but we're doing great. We're honored to be here with you two. You know how much we love you guys. And like you said, we go way back. It's good to be here.
We're amazed at the fact that we are now celebrating our 30th year of ministry. That doesn't say anything about Tara or her age,
Nothing.
but we are currently celebrating our 30th year of ministry together.
Yes.
And so it's a joy to be able to do it with each other, and now to be able to connect to you guys again in this podcast. We're so excited.
Yeah. Yes, we're so excited. And fun fact, our youngest child is named after you guys. Our youngest daughter, Benson. I know.
That's right.
She is awesome. All your girls are awesome.
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to have y'all on this episode of Mutuality Matters is because, in this particular theme that we co-host on the podcast, we talk a lot about the subject of co-leading as equals, not only in the home, but also in church, and what that means even for society as a whole. And as we sat down to think, who do we absolutely need to have on this show, the two of y'all popped into our minds, just because over the years you have been an example to us. Even when I wrote my book on women in ministry, I dedicated it to y'all because you and I put in the dedication that you guys modeled that egalitarian way for us. And so we wanted to honor you guys, but also we wanted those who are listening to benefit from some of the experience and wisdom that you guys have downloaded to us over the years. And especially now as you're walking through leading a church as co-pastors, co-lead pastors, and helping journey that church into that kind of model of ministry. We wanted to get that perspective, because I know that there's a lot of people that have questions of how does that functionally work. It's one thing to say, hey, we co-pastor, but what does that functionally look like? And so I wanted to know if y'all would be able to share a little bit about your personal journey, your experience, and even kind of early on in your guys' marriage and ministry. What led you to this function of co-pastoring together?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I can start, the personal journey for us. I got radically saved my senior year of high school. I mean, I came out of a really, party scene, and I knew once I had given my life to the Lord that I was called to ministry, but I did not know what that looked like for me because I'm going to date myself. It was the late 1980s. And so there was absolutely nothing modeled for me with women in ministry except for like missionaries or pastor's wife. And that's just where I was. But I knew I was called to more than that. And please hear my heart when I say more than that. It was just the models that I seen. I knew I wasn't called to overseas, although I would have gone and would still go if the Lord called me. But I didn't have that model. Then I went to Bible college, and we were just talking about this today. There was only one woman when I was there at Southeastern Bible College at the time in the early 1900s. And that sounds so like the disciples were here on earth with us, the dinosaurs. No. So anyways, there was only one lady that would speak in chapel, and she was a missionary to Calcutta.
Wow.
So I really had this burning desire to be in ministry, but I didn't know where I fit because I didn't have that model. And so I think as we got married and just that burning desire was still there, and you can pick up where you saw your mom being more involved with
Right.
ministry, because the pastor's wife thing that I saw growing up, they worked a different job and they just were there on Sunday. And that's not knocking any pastor's wife that does that, but I knew I was called to pastor. Every spiritual gifting test I took, it was the top one was pastoring or shepherding.
Yeah.
But I had no one to mentor me into what that looked like. So I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah. So I also knew that I was called to ministry there at Southeastern. And when she would articulate what she felt God leading her to and calling her to, I was excited by it, not threatened by it. And I think that that's an important distinction, because if you're jealous of someone else's gift, jealous of someone else's calling, insecure about your own calling, gifting,
Yeah.
that can tend to sway you toward an opinion. It's interesting, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, further, but when someone has an issue about women in ministry, I rarely ask them, well, tell me biblically or theologically first, because I know exactly where they're going to go, and I know exactly where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I usually ask them, well, how do you feel about women? And
Mm.
it's often that their feelings about women have been skewed. And so their mentality about women in ministry is then threatened. So I guess for me, I was excited about that. And I watched my mom function in roles that weren't a typical pastor's wife back then, where you either sing or play the piano or sit
I
on
didn't
the
either.
front row or bake a cake for the auction. He was leading, with elders and deacons. She had a lot of teaching and leading roles, and some of them were behind the scenes. But I saw it modeled so it wasn't awkward or different for me. It was something to be celebrated, not something to be shunned.
That's so good. So as you guys entered into ministry, can you talk about maybe some of the pain points that may have challenged that led you to not run away from, what you both felt like God was calling you into? But I mean, especially for you, Michelle, like how did you, when you face difficulties, fight against that feeling of wanting to maybe shrink back, but staying strong in what God has called you to do?
Mm.
It's good. Well, as I grew and as we got married and grew in ministry and grew in the Lord, I just kind of took on my own role, I should say, of just discipling and pastoring people, although I didn't have that title. So I think our first pastoral assignment, we were youth pastors. And I became a mom at that same time that we were in youth ministry. But anytime that he was out on a missions trip, I was always home because of the kids, which I opted to do that. I would still preach in youth group and run youth group functions like he was here, like him. And so part of that years of youth pastoring, I knew and that I was called to preach, I was called to pastor. So I decided to go further with my credentials. And I know what I'm called to.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that looks. Still, I did not know how that looked because I was not uh, seeing it modeled in front of me. But I knew that I was not called to just sit.
Yeah.
So, and I remember, I'm going to date myself here, but this is when email started to become a thing. I know that sounds really old, but you had to create your own email. And Michelle didn't have an email, so I created hers, pastormichelle@hotmail.com.
Hotmail. Woo.
And she was so upset at first because she knew it was going to create controversy that it was Pastor Michelle, and it did. And I said, baby, this is our statement that I know and you know that you're called, and we're not going to shy away from that. And I know that sounds like such a small and insignificant thing to have the word pastor in your name. But even if everyone refused to call her pastor, I was going to call her pastor.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to affirm that calling and that gifting.
I
that
was
inside of her.
operating in that role anyways.
Yeah.
But, so that's a little fun fact, but
Yeah.
Mark, if I can follow up with you on that, because one of the things that I mean, I've experienced this, as functioning both as a pastor and a pastor's husband, that I know that, we've talked a lot about over the years, and you've been a big source of wisdom for me. It's how do you navigate? And I would suspect the husbands of women who are in ministry often wrestle with that delicate balance between being a support, even being a defender in times, but then also not, kind of being that just bulldog that rushes ahead and doesn't let her, stand on her own 2 feet and be her own person, be her own leader,
Right.
fighting her battles for her, but then also not being so withdrawn that support doesn't, you've kind of abdicated that support role in standing side by side with her. Can you share maybe how you've learned that nuance, some sort of harmony over the years of supporting well without running ahead or lagging behind?
Yeah. So, well, I would say, public empowerment goes both ways. She is a support to me and I'm a support to her. And so, although we don't have to fight each other's battles for one another, we can fight with each other as teammates for a common goal. And, they say that opposites attract, and many couples, that is true. So I have giftings that she doesn't, and she has giftings that I don't. And because of that, there are times positionally where we will have equal authority. And so I think it's important to let each other shine where we're strong.
That's good.
And so if you find that delicate balance, let me know, because I'm always going to be a strong defender of my wife. My name, Mark, actually, or Marcus, means strong defender. And so, I feel that, but I also know that sometimes you can fight and lead out of insecurity. Insecurity for for yourself or your spouse. And I don't think that's healthy either. I think having the wisdom to relax in who God's made you to be is so important. And I think it speaks volumes to your spouse to say, I believe in you because this is who God made you to be. You don't have to be stressed by your strengths. You don't have to be stressed by your weaknesses. You can understand them. You can work on weaknesses. But hey, if you're called and you're strong and gifted in something, like, go to it. And I played in team sports, so I understand, like in basketball, I want to pass to the person who has the hot hand. And she's got the hot hand a lot of times. And so why not pass to the Michael Jordan in that situation? Why wouldn't you? That's almost foolish to do anything else. Yeah, I think that things that we did intentionally, like tag team preaching, when we first came here, or going to the first board meeting, teaching people that were misinformed about what's biblical. I think that's important. I can't be mad at you if you're naive, or mad at you because this is the way you were raised or this is how you were taught. I'd rather give you a biblical understanding, and let you hear a female voice speak the truth of God's word, than to let you stay in your naivete, right? That would be even worse. As a pastor, I'm supposed to lead. As a pastor, she's supposed to lead. Why not lead biblically? So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's certainly where we find our points of balance, maybe.
Women have been at the forefront of discoveries, new technologies, leaders in their communities, homes, even churches for hundreds of years. But their stories often go untold and eventually get forgotten. Join CBE International at this year's conference, Tell Her Story, Women in Scripture and History, where we will spend 3 days rediscovering these stories and studying the mountains of evidence for women in leadership. Come for exciting keynote lectures and in-depth workshops from renowned scholars, authors, and theologians. You can register today at cbe.today/Denver 2024.
Now you're at Dothan, which we've been to Dothan. It's a great congregation, great community. And you guys stepped in as co-pastors from a male-led senior pastor. It's an egalitarian church, but it was a male-led pastor with primarily male leadership. Is that correct? And then you stepped in as co-pastors. So talk us through that process, because that's a huge cultural change for a church to walk through. Can you just kind of hit on maybe just how did that work? What were maybe some pain points? What were some strengths that you found that happened as a result of you co-leading together from a primarily male-led leadership?
Yeah. Well, I would say it took a minute. I don't think that we went through as much as maybe some other co-pastoring have gone through. I think from the get-go, before they even interviewed us and before we even candidated here, it was Pastors Mark and Michelle.
Yeah.
Getting Pastors Mark and Michelle coming. And we candidated together. I mean, you actually did the preaching, but the whole interview, everything we did on the platform was together, answering questions together. And like he said, from the get-go, we were Pastors Mark and Michelle. And not that it's all about a title, but it was all about co-pastoring and staying in our gifts and our lane. And that's a whole nother, I'll put that to the side, because it's been a journey for us. It's not like we woke up one day and it's like, you look, you do your gifts and I'll do mine and we'll be happy together. You know, we've had some struggle at home and how to really flow in our lane and our giftings. But I think coming here, we felt pretty much all accepted, because like I said, the first board member, the first board meeting, I was there, and it was an all male board meeting. But it's like, this is my wife, and this is she co-pastors with me, and she'll be in these boards meetings, and nobody bucked, but everybody has treated us very, very well together. We do the Wiregrass Hope Center together. Everything's together, or you know, I'll go without you. We divide and conquer when different things.
Yeah, I mean, we are in the deep South, and there are some intense feelings in certain denominations about women in ministry. And I think in mentioning it before, you can't lead out of insecurity. And you also can't lead out of competition, because there are plenty of people that will probably be in heaven that are shocked by the fact that women could have been pastors all along. So I know that they're still my brothers and sisters in Christ. I don't feel like I have something to prove to them. Although I will say it's hard when you can't argue winning. And that is something that if we were poor leaders, or if we struggled either publicly or privately, or consistently with our roles, and the balance of weighing out ministry, if we were constantly arguing over decisions, if we were fighting over who's right, if we didn't have lanes to run in and giftings to lead us, then I think people would see it and go, oh my gosh, this is a train wreck. Like you have a two-headed monster. And then it would only be proof to those who say it can't be done. See, we told you it can't be done. And so I think to be able to lead out of a sense of gratitude, equal value, a determination without competition. There's something about loving your spouse and the Lord that makes you very humble that he would even call you to do anything of great value. So the fact that he called both of us into a role to help people know him more shocks me every day. It shocks me that he'd call me and use me for anything great. And so if there's humility in that call, then there should be value for others with that same calling. And so I don't know. I think that's probably the biggest blessing we could walk away with, is that God chose us to use us to make a change for the better.
Now, I will add to that, just coming here and modeling that the co-pastoring has trickled down in our leadership. Like our elders that we've gone, take them through training, they operate as husband-wife teams together. And also the females are strong leaders, and they can go out and pray for somebody by themselves at the hospital or at, a funeral or whatever. So we feel like that it has really put a healthy blanket over our church to see that modeling of pastoring. But it hasn't always, just thinking and being real, and I don't know what your next question is, but just something that came to me. It hasn't been easy for us on the backside of it, what people may see, because early on in this for us, I know I was fighting a lot of insecurity because, and it probably was from the pain or that not being heard to just how women in ministry have been treated, probably that, and the personally insecurity of being a just walking through life, so we really had to really work at it. It got intense at times of like you overspoke, you talked over me, and because we both, and as you can tell, we're both very passionate and strong. So
we've done that too. We've done that too.
if you ever think that I'm not going to have opinion, then you are so wrong. So, and the same with him. And so we have had to, as strong people in itself, we've had to really work through our marriage and what we want it to look like. And there's still, yes, we've been doing this for 30 years. And 8 really of co-pastoring leadership and senior leadership, but we've got our flow, we've got our rhythm, we know, but there's still a few times, and I was just sharing with him, like this is an example. I launched a new ministry here about a month ago, and I started making decisions, telling everybody in the staff, this is what we're going to do, this is what's going to look like, cast the vision, and started just given assignments. Well, and the next thing I know, I'm talking to one of our staff members and I'm like, oh, have you done XYZ? And she says, well, Pastor Mark said that he didn't want us to do that. And so I was like,
I didn't know.
She said, I thought he would talk to you about it. Now, everybody that co-pastors knows what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to be sensitive to your team members. Never want them to think that they have to choose a side or make them
Right.
feel uncomfortable. So I smiled, but inside I was like, I'm going to kill him for doing this because I made a decision. But my response was, okay, well, I'm going to talk to him about that and I'm going to get back with you on that.
Right.
Go ahead and just hold off and we'll talk, but inside I was
Yeah.
like, what? But then we talk about it. And even if we have differences of opinion, we're okay with that.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we come to a conclusion of, one of us will go with one of our decisions, but we
Right.
never do it in front of the staff. I mean, they know us enough now to know, like, oh, mama and daddy are having a disagreement. I can tell by their look because I'll look at him in staff meeting. I'm like,
Yeah, she'll smile with that certain smile.
Yeah.
so, but
Hey, we lived in the South.
something-
We know what that smile means.
But, oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Wait till your dad gets home. It's something that we have had to. It's been hard at times,
Yeah.
but to respect one another, respect the call that's on our life, the giftings in each other,
Mhm.
call them out, but also it's not a competition.
Right.
Yeah.
And we want
And
to
I think-
function with, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is the closing statement for me is that we want to function with singular vision, with plurality of leadership. Let me say it again. Singular vision with plurality of leadership, because it really is two voices saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's the sense of agreement that we feel is important to walk in, because some of these decisions that are minor are going to pass, and neither one of us will remember what decision we landed on. The big ones, we know before God,
Yeah.
we want to be humble and walk this thing out together.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think that point that you highlighted of just in that difference of opinion, it wasn't a coming together so one head could prevail over the other. It was coming together for the purpose of coming to a conclusion and that's really what mutuality is. That's how that functionally works. It's upheld. It's carried forward by covenant and by that interdependence, which I think is essential to what it means to lead as a man and a woman together. We're out of time. I wish we could continue talking about this forever, but before we conclude today's episode, I wanted to provide an opportunity for you guys to take a moment, and if you could specifically address the women and men that are listening to this podcast, how would you encourage them? Maybe how would you exhort them to be what God has called them, or who God has called them to be?
Yeah. Well, I would say for me, know your calling before God, know your calling. And then the second thing I would say is you need to know your gifting, because those are two very important things that will make you feel a sense of security in both yourself and the Lord. If you know who you are and who God made you to be, then go do the work of the ministry. People are not your enemy. They're often the product of the way they were raised, and God will elevate you in due time and in due season. So I would say be who God called you to be, because God took the time to create little grooves in your fingertips to make sure that you were different from everybody else on planet Earth. And if you do that, he'll get the glory ultimately, but you'll actually fulfill your assignment on the earth. Yeah.
And I, want to piggyback on that, knowing your calling. I guess I would just leave this word of, yes, knowing your calling, but also know that man meaning humankind, is never your enemy. And it's don't get caught up in the fight of that. And the second one that I would say is always fight humbly and
That's
fight
good.
to, yes, your voice, knowing who you are, knowing what he called you to, but always keep a humble attitude in
Yeah.
it, because you don't have to prove yourself to a human. And when you start to feel that, then you know that you're probably out of alignment for that, because really he's the only one that we answer to.
That's good.
That's so good. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us. And we want to direct it to our listeners that you can go to cbeinternational.org, and we're going to have resources. So if you ever want to connect with Pastors Michelle or Pastor Mark, you can. And I know that they have tons of wisdom, and we've benefited from your leadership so much. Thank you guys for pouring into us and being a model, an example for women and men who are in ministry, leading together. It is, as you said, not easy. There's bumps and bruises along the way, but it is so worth it. And it's easier walking hand in hand than it is to walk alone. So thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mutuality Matters. We'll see you next time.
Mutuality Matters podcast, along with thousands of CBE's other resources and content, is available for free on CBE's website, which is possible because of donor support. Together, we can spread the message that God calls women and men of all cultures, races, and classes to share authority equally in service and leadership in the home, church, and world. Give today at cbe.today/donate.